And this month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored in part by Allison Cook, Super Inframan, and Eric Hervin. Thank you all so much for your support. And if you want to become a patron and help support Where Did the Road Go, you can do so at wheredidtheroadgo.com. It's only $3 a month. You get extra content all month. You can also support the show through donations off the website or pick up some merch. All available at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Soraya.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I have with me, returning after a few years, Mr. Robert Sullivan. Hey there, Robert.
Hi, Soraya. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. You have another book out on cinema symbolism.
Correct. This is the third edition, or the third volume of Cinema Symbolism, Volume 3, Cinema Symbolism 3. It came out last May, or I think the print edition came out in March and the ebook came out in May. And this is the latest of the movie books. Okay.
And we've also had you on for the Royal Arch of Enoch. And you have a fiction book out called The Pact with the Devil?
Correct. I think I've been on the show maybe 2 or 3 other times. I lose track of them over the years.
Yeah, I think
I did the Royal Arch of Enoch, and I think one or two of the movie books for one of those, and then there is a work of fiction out called A Pact with the Devil, this is Cinema Symbolism 3.
All right. Well, let's get into some of these some of the stuff in this book. One of the things you cover is 9/11 with life imitating art.
Yes, correct. This is something that's interesting that I actually stumbled upon quite accidentally, and I had no idea about any of this. And I was researching 9/11, and whether you're a conspiracy person or not, I did find this interesting. I'm not saying this is what happened, but it is worth putting out there because it is interesting. Was the one thing that with 9/11, and this focuses on the Twin Tower buildings and Building 7, was when they collapsed, they come down in free fall, and many speculate that there was thermite charges that helped bring the buildings down.
Right.
Planes actually hit them, but the buildings come down on their own footprints, and this kind of defies physics. And many have speculated that if that was the case, there would have had to have been explosive planted in the building. So obviously that question, or that hypothesis, begs the next question is, well, let's assume for a minute that there were explosives in the building, thermite charges, whatever. How did they get there? And sure enough, there was a massive renovation that occurred in the Twin Towers between January of 2001 and September of 2001. And the company that carried out this renovation, this refurbishing to the elevators, the escalators, was a company called Ace Elevator Company. And what's interesting is that name doesn't appear anywhere in the 9/11 Commission. And you would have thought, I mean, logic dictates that if you were having, especially buildings of that magnitude, a massive overhaul, repair work done, Otis Elevator would be who you call. They're the oldest elevator company in the country. They're the ones who install everything. But this little dinky company called Ace Elevator was called. And I hypothesize in the book, and that as a word I use that I want to stress, I don't state it, I hypothesize that if these guys were government spooks or something, they obviously took the name Ace Elevator from a movie. And the movie I'm referring to is a 1985 film called Spies Like Us, where the government wetworks company, the dummy company, was called Ace Tomato Company. It stood out to me like a sore thumb. And I just found it very fascinating that, it could be a case of life imitating art, where this company taken for this seemingly bogus elevator company was actually lifted from a movie. And this is something I talk about in the book, how influential Hollywood is. I've talked about, on this show and other shows about archetypes and things like that, and how they permeate Hollywood and, permeate cinema. Hollywood also invents archetypes. For instance, ask any adult or man, woman, and child to speak like a vampire. And what are they going to do? I mean, they're going to try to imitate Bela Lugosi's Hungarian accent. So it just speaks to something like that, to the power that Hollywood wields. It's an interesting hypothesis, but something I did discover, and you can look at it disturbingly, but it's there, and I don't have an answer for it. But like I said, it could be a case of life imitating art.
And you also talk about 9/11 imaging in films like Vanilla Sky, The Matrix, Fight Club, things like that.
Absolutely, and this is a really interesting talking point, because you do have, and I do believe some people out there think that this is planned. I don't think it is. I think this has some. I think you're dealing with something coming out of the world of the supernatural. You have these slate of movies prior to 9/11. Before 9/11, leading right up to it. I mean, you could document it. It's almost like a countdown of films such as Fight Club, which I think was 99, The Matrix, which I think was 98, Vanilla Sky, which was 01, but it was filmed prior to 9/11. Donnie Darko, I mean, even a film like The Patriot with Mel Gibson, all have this 9/11 imagery in it. I mean, some of it's quite astounding. It feels like a countdown. For instance, the movie Fight Club was released on September 21st, 1999. I mean, it's almost the date, off by 10 days. And of course, you have at the end of the movie, the buildings collapsing. You have Tyler Durden, that's Brad Pitt, referring to the site as Ground Zero. You have the destruction by the space monkeys of the sphere, the globe-shaped piece of artwork. This clearly represents the sphere outside the World Trade Center Plaza, which was also destroyed in 9/11 with the falling debris. That movie, like I said, is almost released 2 years to the date of 9/11, but then you go back 2 years earlier to 1997, you have September 21st, 1997, and you have the Simpsons episode called Homer Simpson versus New York City, and this is the one where Bart waves the money in front of the magazine that says 9/11, and the 11's made by the World Trade Center. So, I mean, you have this really bizarre form of synchronicity going on. It's almost like a countdown. And then you had this slate of Gnostic films coming out at the turn of the millennium, and it's all the ones we talk about, The Matrix, Fight Club, Donnie Darko, and they all feature this 9/11 imagery. And it begs the question of why. And I think it's supernatural. I think it's something coming out of the collective unconscious. I don't see, I mean, it could happen that you had a bunch of studio execs sitting around saying, hey, let's plan out a bunch of Gnostic films coming out right before the turn of the millennium. I think it's much more on a subconscious, supernatural level, me personally, and I think that makes it much more interesting. And you definitely have it. And it's all these movies are dealing with enlightenment, knowing thyself, coming to understand that reality may not be what it seems to be. Whether this has to do with the change of the millennium, the end of the age of Pisces, the start of Aquarius, this could all factor into this. But that type of symbolism placed in film, to me, doesn't seem it's intentional, but it seems intentional coming from the world of the supernatural.
I feel like 9/11 was something that made a big imprint on us, and that type of imprint moves backwards in time as well as it does forwards in time, and so maybe they were just picking up on that without realizing that they were picking up on it. I mean, you had I think there was a rap band who had an album cover of a plane flying toward the Twin Towers.
You could go back in time with a lot of this stuff. I mean, the farther away you get from it, the more suspect it becomes, of course. But I mean, the stuff leading up to it, to me, is much more interesting. But I mean, you can go back in time to earlier that year. I believe it was in 2001. I may have been 2000, but pretty sure it was 2001 where you had the X-Files spinoff episode, The Lone Gunman, where the plot of the pilot episode actually dealt with terrorists hijacking aircraft, was a false flag, and flying them into the World Trade Center.
Really?
I mean, you go back. You go back in time. I mean, look at the movie from the early '80s, Escape from New York, John Carpenter, where terrorists hijacked Air Force One and crashed it into Lower Manhattan. I mean, that's 20 years earlier.
That's a little less specific, though.
Oh, exactly. No, I agree. I totally agree. You can find this stuff going back earlier on. To me, the more interesting aspect is the closer you get to the event is when it becomes much more pronounced. And much more visible.
Well, I think if information is moving backwards in time, you're going to have exactly that happen. Because that rap album, I think, came out in like 99 or 2000. I know Dream Theater I want to say they put their album out right around 9/11, and it had a cityscape of New York City on fire. And they put it out, and then that happened, and they either canceled it or they just stopped selling that version, and then just put one out with just the New York City landscape.
Right. I mean, the one that's really astounding is the Vanilla Sky with Tom Cruise, which was shot post 9/11. It was in pre-production. It was in post-production when 9/11 hit. And the movie, I think, was released in this. It was. I don't believe it was released in December of 2001. I mean, the end of that movie is very poignant, where Tom Cruise ascends this giant, super high skyscraper in New York City that actually overlooks the Twin Towers. And in order to come to consciousness and in order to come to self-realization, he has to jump off the building. I mean, you see him leap off, falling down, right, in the backdrop of the World Trade Centers. I mean, it brings to mind immediately, the people jumping off that building. And just real quick, the director was pressured to remove that, and he didn't. And I think he was smart not to remove it.
Huh. And I remember there was something weird with the Matrix. What was the 9/11 date was in there somewhere, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's it actually, the whole date appears. It's Neo's passport. It expires on 9/11/01 to the date. And there's a couple. There's another reason that ties into that, and it deals with his birthday also, which has a date also that has to do with the suppression by Nelson Rockefeller, the governor of New York, with regarding a prison riot. And of course, Neo is the exact opposite. He will free the prisoners from the prison. Right. So Neo's birth date also has symbolic meaning. But yeah, I mean, in the Matrix, the date of 9/11/2001 is right there, and you got to pause it, and I think it's upside down, but it is readable, and it appears in the scene where he's being interrogated at the beginning by Smith, is where it turns up, and I mean, you have that, and coupled with all these other things, to me, just doing this for the last 20 years or whatever, researching the Royal Arch and then doing all the movie stuff, I'm at the point now where this to me strikes me as more supernatural than planned.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm pretty sure.
I think it makes it much more interesting. Go ahead.
I think you could probably do an entire book just on The Simpsons.
Yeah, you probably could. I mean, you scratch the surface with some of this stuff. I mean, some of it is really uncanny. One of the things I talk about in the book, and I'm not being political here, but is Donald Trump. I mean, there's the movie The Gremlins 2, where there's a Donald Trump, I think it came out in 1991 or 92 maybe. There's a Donald Trump analog in that movie called Daniel Clamp, played by John Glover. And there's a scene where he comes out of a skyscraper and he's interviewed by the media, and they shove two microphones in his face. And the numbers on the microphones are 11 and 9. And this again, of course, on November 9th, the date he became president. And then this reoccurs a few years later, where he does a Serta mattress ad. I believe it's in 2011, I want to say, maybe 2009. And I won't get into much, but it has to do with counting sheep. And to make a long story short, the sheep wind up guarding his hotel room, and they're out in front of rooms 9/11 or 11/9, and again, November 9th. And then you have, with Trump, you have the Lego movie, which also, you have a guy named Business who becomes President Business, and his sole modus operandi is to build walls around the different Lego worlds. He refers to his detractors as snowflakes. I mean, it's very prophetic, and it's very strange to say the least. And like I said, you just begin to wonder. You reach a point where you're just saying to yourself, this is more supernatural than it seems. It seems beyond the realm of human possibility.
Well, there's also the Simpsons episode where Trump is president, and it literally occurred in real life, that exact scene.
There's one where there's one, I think, where Trump, where it's Trump. It came out. This is a mistake where it's made, but Trump was actually president at the time.
Oh, was he?
And
okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think that one's been debunked a little bit, but I know the Simpsons have been very prophetic, but it's been on for so long, had to get something right.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I mean, like I said, I get into the whole idea of movies as prophecies, as vehicles of prophecy. I mean, you go back and I mean, there's an episode of The Legends of Chamberlain Heights, which I think came out around 2008, 2009. I'd have to go look. That depicts Kobe Bryant dying in a helicopter crash.
Oh.
The movie The China Syndrome was released 2 weeks before 3 Mile Island, and of course, The China Syndrome is about a nuclear reactor melting down. I mean, it really becomes uncanny after a while, and you do say to yourself, at least I do, this isn't coincidence. But I do have a hard time believing that this is done by a human hand.
Right.
And then you have to account for it. And the way I account for it is it's supernatural, which to me makes it much more interesting. But that's just me.
No, I agree. And I think that's exactly what's going on. These creative people are picking up on this information, and it just comes out in their creation.
Yeah, I agree. This actually, what you just said, delves into the world of Platonism. Of course, I'm talking about the Greek philosopher Plato, and he argued that the creative process brought you in touch with the divine. So why can't we argue that, a film being something that's created, being something that is highly artistic, some more than others, of course, can't be an expression of some sort of supernatural, ethereal force? I think that is likely and probable.
So let's talk about Midsommar and Hereditary.
Where do you want to start with those? I mean, these are two movies that I just fell in love with. Ari Aster, I was on another show and someone was saying that, I don't think Hollywood, makes movies that are very good anymore. And I disagree. I thought both Midsommar and Hereditary were outstanding. I love both of them. They are incredibly dark films.
Yes.
If you're into horror, you should love them. If you're not, you probably want to stay away. I mean, the one thing that, I mean, these movies are multi-layered, and I love them for that, because these are always the most interesting to analyze. The one thing that I'll get into this a little bit. I'll try to keep it short, but have to get into it a little bit.
Yeah, no,
the
go
one
ahead.
thing he loves to do, more than anything else, is foreshadowing. He loves to foreshadow events early on that are going to play out later in the movie. And one of the great movies that does this, and I think it's one of the first ones, and it's a movie that Astor borrows from. He must be in love with it, is The Exorcist. And in The Exorcist, William Friedkin has one of the best foreshadowing devices in all films that I've ever seen. And it occurs in the scene where Jason Miller, Father Karras, is talking to the language expert at Georgetown, and he's getting into what language is. He says it's English in reverse. Well, when the scene's being framed, you'll see him standing behind a glass window, and above the window is a Japanese word, "fusketi." You'll see it plain as day if you watch the film, and that is a Japanese word or phrase that means "help me." And of course, the very next scene is where Father Karras goes up into the bedroom of the little girl. She pulls back the nightgown, and there's "help me," on her stomach. Astor loves foreshadowing, and I'm sure this is the film you get it from. And he uses these little mnemonics in his films, like, for instance, in Hereditary, when they go up into the attic, you'll see a lot of headless mannequins. This is twofold. One is, of course, the demon Paimon is obsessed with decapitation. And in The Exorcist, when Chris McNeils goes into her attic, you'll find a headless mannequin up there also. So that's like this little art of memory mnemonic trick that Astor's playing with you by doing it. He's subconsciously placing The Exorcist, the vibe of The Exorcist in his film. And I think that's very well done. I mean, anytime a director is doing things like that, I sit up in my chair and really start paying attention, because now I know I'm dealing with an expert craftsman. And I know his film is going to be laden with occult imagery and these subconscious themes. So I really start paying attention to his work, or that person's work, that director's work. And then you get into things like, with Midsommar, the one thing you'll notice is that the number 9 permeates that film. I mean, it's everywhere. And I don't have time to get into it, but there's 2 reasons for that. One is the number 9 is critical within Norse mythology. And if you have it in the book, I'm not going to get into a laundry list right now, but the number 9 is all over the place in Norse mythology. And the other thing that's unique about it is, if you're familiar with Hereditary, the demon that takes center stage in that film is a demon named Paimon. who comes straight out of the Lesser Key of Solomon. This is one of the demons that King Solomon used, commanded with his magic ring. And he's actually listed as the 9th demon. And I couldn't help but believe that by using the number 9 all over the place in Midsommar, he kind of was almost transferring the demonism of Hereditary and Payman into this new movie he was making. That very much impressed me because the movie is so incredibly dark. I did feel like it was almost like demonic, where the girl at the end is almost so insane and so crazy. She strikes me as sinister and very vicious and evil, demonic as it were. And then one of the things that Aster does is you get into Midsommar. I mean, it's layered. I mean, it's just layered. I mean, you have the occult symbolism, the things just moving around in the movie, but then you have a whole Wizard of Oz homage, where you can look at Danny as Dorothy, the 3 travelers as Tin Man, Scarecrow, and the Cowardly Lion. They all run parallel with them, going to this magical land to have this mystical journey, a journey of gnosis, a journey of epiphany. Dorothy Gale comes to know herself and realizes there's no place like home. Danny comes to realize that she's basically a psychopath by the end of Midsommar. So you have that. You have to do that analysis. And then, if that wasn't enough heavy lifting, then you got to go back and watch the movie all over again, because then you have to analyze the runes, the elder and younger Futhark that appear in the film, because they all have meaning and they're all strategically placed. So I just as a guy, as a person who, analyzes movies, on an occult level, the films of Ari Aster are very, I very much enjoy watching them because it gives me a lot of food for thought. It gives me a lot to feast upon. And I'll just end on this note real quick. When I was finishing up Cinema Symbolism 3, I pretty much had the book done. And I saw, this was going back in time to January of 2020, pretty much the book was complete. And I saw Midsommar on Blu-ray, and I was so impressed with it. I just had to incorporate it into the book, and I pretty much put everything on hold, stopped everything, and then went back into the book, delved back into it, and added Midsommar. And I'm glad I did, because I think it's one of my favorite sections of the book. And I just love those 2 movies. They're incredibly dark, but they're just so well done.
Oh, yeah, they're incredibly well done. I feel like I watched the 3-hour version of each of them, and I feel like they were movies that, I don't know if I would want to watch again, actually, because they were so dark. Yeah, they're like traumatic to watch. They weren't like a typical horror movie. There weren't jump scares and things like that.
No, I totally agree. There's very little jump scares. They are very psychologically disturbing. I mean, they're akin to like The Exorcist, where it's psychologically disturbing to watch. And I have both of the films here on Blu-ray, and I think they're fantastic. But I agree with you; they're very dark, and they do. I mean, they're movies that do remind me of things like The Exorcist, and even The Black Cat with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, where you almost feel like there's evil in the celluloid. And that's the vibe I pick up on when I watch those 2 movies. But they are very well done, and I very much enjoy them. I did Midsommar in CS3, and I want to do Hereditary, but I thought, no, that's going to just drag it out just far too long. So we'll shoot for Hereditary in Cinema Symbolism 4.
The other thing with Midsommar is that it was like it's not necessarily evil in a sense. It's almost like morality based on culture. Yeah, I suppose so. I liked it. I mean, and I just found it was this very dark, brooding film. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I very much liked it. I mean, they do incorporate the religious aspects of it on. I mean, June 24th is Midsommar. I mean, the date of June 24th is overloaded with occult meaning. This is the date in 1717 when Freemasonry was founded, and the reason is because it's St. John's Day, the date of the baptizer. This is why John the Baptist is the Lord of Summer. And if you pay attention to the movie very closely, when they are walking into the commune, you'll see these little yellow flowers that they're walking upon. That's St. John's wort. That's a herb that blossoms at Midsommar on June 24th, named after the baptizer. And interestingly, that's a flower that is used to cure mental illness. And of course, this is what Danny's suffering from. So you get into the whole religious allegory regarding this, regarding John the Baptist and June 24th. It's an interesting study. Like I said, the analysis I presented in the book, I want to say, is probably close to around 50 to 75 pages. I believe outside of Joker, it's the longest portion of the book, or the longest analysis of the book, just because there is so much going on in that. I mean, I haven't even scratched the surface with the allusions to Stanley Kubrick. What they do in that is there's a scene, where they want to convey the isolation that these four outsiders have in the commune. So they conjure The Shining, which of course Jack, Wendy, and Danny are isolated in the Overlook Hotel. And you'll notice this, that he frames it when they arrive from an aerial view, when they turn off the road and go up the little dirt path. And he uses the exact same angles similar to Kubrick when he filmed the beginning of The Shining, where Jack is driving up alone, in the yellow Volkswagen, going up the lonely road all by himself to the Overlook. He uses that same framing angle. That's intentional. That's designed to conjure The Shining. And then he does it again when you're watching it, and Danny has the dream in the bunkhouse about her sister, coughing up the smoke or whatever. The blanket is the carpet from the Overlook that little Danny Torrance is playing on. So, he conjures The Shining twice. And again, that's tinkering. That's a mnemonic. That's a subconscious mnemonic that he's really toying with your subconscious mind to transfer the isolation of the Overlook into this movie. Very well done. And like I said, when I start seeing stuff like that, I now know I'm dealing with a grand master, and that there's a lot going on here.
And of course, there are very obvious connections to the original Wicker Man movie as well.
Oh, of course. You can't talk about Midsommar without mentioning The Wicker Man with Chris Lee. Fantastic movie. Another wonderful film. Very dark. I mean, a very dark film. I saw an interview with Chris Lee talking about it, and I think, I'm so glad you brought up The Wicker Man, because this movie has a unique effect on people, and it almost has the same effect when they start watching it. Is number one is it has a reputation of a horror movie. It really isn't. It has a horrific ending, but it's more a mystery movie, and it's more like a Sherlock Holmes style mystery to me. But when people start to watch it at the beginning, and this is the reaction I had to it, and I don't know if this is the reaction you had to it, when you watch the first 15 minutes of The Wicker Man, I'm talking about the original, of course, with Chris Lee, not the remake with Nick Cage, you'll be sitting there thinking to yourself, gosh, I didn't know this was a musical. That's everyone's seemingly initial reaction to it is, I didn't know I was watching a musical. And I've never really viewed The Wicker Man as a horror film. It's more of a mystery with a horrific ending.
Yeah.
But of course, you cannot help but see the parallels where you have the Christian burned alive in The Wicker Man as the sacrifice to the sun, and then you have a character named Christian burned alive as a sacrifice to the sun god in Midsommar. Yeah. Parallels are definitely intentional.
And every time I mention that it's a musical, I'll get someone who will say, it's not a musical because it's not all music. It's just, it has musical episodes in it. And it's like, okay, whatever. It's same difference, really.
Yeah, and I don't, I don't really view The Wicker Man as a musical. But it is hard not to see it as such, especially when you watch the first 15, 20 minutes of it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, what is this? And, this is like some sort of Christopher Lee, horror / musical. But I love the film. Lee said, I think towards the end of his life in an interview, he thought that was his best film. That was his best role and best film. And in fact, I believe, and I'll let don't hold me to this, but when Lee read the script, he was so taken by it. And I should point out also, and this is something I get into the book, those two movies, Wicker Man and Midsommar, the whole idea of these pagan cults, with the sun god sacrifice and the full character punch, you see it in both films. This is coming straight out of a book. It's one of the earliest books about comparative religion. It's a book called The Golden Bough by J.G. Fraser. That's the kernel that, the acorn that grew these two mighty oaks. And I invite everyone to check it out. It's a great book. I have it here. I'm actually sitting here looking at it on my shelf. It's staring back at me. But Lee said that the movie was one of his favorites, and he wanted to be in it so much that I believe he actually waived his salary. I think he did it for free. That's how much he wanted to be a part of The Wicker Man.
Wow. All right. Let's talk about some of the stuff in The Witch.
Yeah, this is a great film. This is Roger Eggers, who is good. I don't know if I'm ready to put him on the same level as Ari Aster, but he's very good. And what I liked about The Witch is a great film. It's very scary, very disturbing. It has a lot of very subtle imagery in it. I mean, the whole thing with the goat, of course, is designed to conjure Baphomet, the goat of Mendes, Black Phillip. I like it at the end when, if you pay attention to, you're dealing with the archetypes. I mean, you're dealing with the ogre father, the mother, the twins, Gemini, the daughter, the idea of the hero, the son who thinks he's a hero, but he's actually not. So we're dealing with all the archetypes are present in this one. Astor said in an interview that it's an archetypal tale. He actually used that word. He's dead on right. Some of the things that I think are very subtle in it that I really like this, and one is really hard to see, is when the girl, Thomason, this is Anna Taylor-Joy, goes into the goat house at the end to basically offer her soul to the devil. And she speaks to Black Phillip, and of course at that point he talks back to her and he turns into a human. You got to pay real close attention. And of course in the movie he's Black Phillip, he's the goat. You got to pay real close attention. It's very hard to see because it's very dark, but when he gets up and he walks towards her, his one leg is still cloven hooved. He hasn't fully come out of the goat form. He's like mostly human, but he still has the cloven hoof. And then the one thing that's really neat, is really cool, is in this is when she walks into the woods at the end to attend the Sabbath around the bonfire, you hear the witches chanting. Most people are not aware this is actually one of John Dee's Enochian keys. Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that they're enchanting. This has to be pointed out that this is the Anton LaVey version of the Enochian keys in the Satanic Bible.
Oh, okay.
This is not John Dee's version. If you are not aware of this, if the listeners are aware of this, John Dee was this Elizabethan magician who spoke to angels through this language called Enochian. He's an interesting character. I could talk all night about some of the things linked to him. And Dee had these Enochian chants, but they're Neoplatonic. They're pretty much harmless. I mean, all praises to Jesus Christ, things like that. Well, the founder of the Church of Satan was a guy named Anton LaVey. In fact, his middle name is Anton. His middle name is Shandor. And if that name rings a bell, it should. This is a reference in the Ghostbuster movies to the guy who built the Gozer Chapel up on top of the rooftop. His name was Ivo Shandor. That's a reference to Anton LaVey. And of course, he was building the satanic cult around Gozer worship. And but LaVey in the Satanic Bible alters the Enochian calls, the Enochian chants, and he makes them satanic. So where Dee is saying things like, all praises to Jesus Christ, LaVey changes it to all praises to Leviathan and Satan and all his minions. So when you watch The Witch, you are getting the Enochian call. I forget which one it is. I think it's the 7th one. It might be the 9th one. I'd have to go look. It's in the book. But it's the Anton LaVersion satanic call. And of course, that's much more appropriate because she has sold her soul to the devil.
Right.
So it's a great film. Just briefly, I'll wrap up on this. I like Eggers' follow-up, The Lighthouse. But the problem with that movie is he borrows from so much. It's very helter-skelter. It's very schizoid. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of like maritime mythology, Greek mythology, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Coleridge. It's very hodgepodge. Much more difficult to pick up on and kind of disjointed, I felt. But I did like it. So I do like Roger Eggers. Maybe not the master as Astor, but still a great filmmaker.
Okay. Also, that when LaVey translated the Enochian chants, being more of an atheist, really, he changed it from calls to the angels to calls to the angles of reality.
Yeah, you could certainly you could certainly argue that. I mean, he makes them more demonic. Basically, he just removes the Christian elements of Dee and just replaces them with demonic ones.
Right. But he actually changed it instead of, in the book, it actually says they're angles instead of angels.
That's fair enough. It's the Satanic Bible is, is basically a plagiarized work from start to finish. I mean, he borrows them from Dee. I mean, he can call them whatever he wants. He borrows them from Dee. The corpus of the book, most of it comes from a book. I forget the guy's alias. It's a pen name. It's called Might is Right. And he lifts heavily. LaVey Bars plagiarizes that book from pretty much start to finish. And this is what causes the splinter. This is exposed by a guy in the 1970s, a guy named Michael Aquino, who exposes this and calls LaVey a fraud. And Aquino was a member of the Church of Satan, and he goes out and forms his own kind of quote unquote Church of Satan. He calls it the Temple of Set. Yeah. And this is he claims it's the real Satanism, of course. And Aquino is an interesting character. I mean, he's the source of all sorts of conspiracies. He was in the military. I believe he was lieutenant general or something in the military, and he's often credited as being the force behind sort of the satanic panic of the 1980s. Which was actually the basis of a film called The House of the Devil, which came out in 2009. So yeah, LaVey's an interesting character, and so is Aquino. And like I said, as far as the Enochian chants go, LaVey plagiarized them. He just altered them around. So
Aquino, when you say Aquino was behind some of the satanic panic, what do you mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, so there was in the 1980s there was this theory. I mean, it was a real thing that people were bringing their, going to psychiatrists about this. There was this deep fear in the suburbs that there were these roaming bands of Satanists, right, roaming white suburbia, basically looking for children and people to sacrifice to Satan.
And then you have all the recovered memories under hypnosis, which were false memories and things like that. Yeah, exactly. Some people claim it's been discredited. Some people claim it's been real. It was real. But Aquino, because he became this sort of talk show figure with the Temple of Set, he was always by the 1980s, LaVey had pretty much moved into retirement. He had kind of dropped out of the scene. LaVey's basically heyday was 1966 to around 1975. By then, LaVey had gotten off the lecture circuit. He kind of stopped doing radio interviews, stopped doing TV interviews, kind of stopped doing magazine interviews. And Aquino kind of picks up where LaVey kind of goes into retirement. And Aquino is kind of blamed, rightfully or wrongfully, it doesn't really matter, for this sort of satanic panic that was permeating white suburbia in the 1980s. There's a movie about this. It's very little known. I think it went straight to like Blu-ray or DVD. I don't know if it was ever released in the theaters. It's a very good movie. I recommend people to watch it. You can buy it on Blu-ray right now on Amazon, or probably watch it online, whatever. It's called House of the Devil. Oh yeah, that was excellent.
Yeah, that documents it. That's all about the satanic panic of the 1980s. I forget. Oh boy, I forget the name of the actors who were the Satanists in it. But it's what's his name did that? Ty West was the director, and it's a very good film, and it's called The House of the Devil. If you haven't seen it, by all means check it out. It's a very well done movie. It's set in the 1980s, and they film it, and the credits look like it looks like it was made in the 1980s.
Yes,
yeah. It's a very good movie. Check it out. That's all about the satanic panic of the 1980s.
I remember putting that on and just being like, wait, is this an old movie? Like that I just never heard of before? Because it really does come across as an 80s movie.
Absolutely. I mean, it's made in the vein of like an 80s, movie like Hell House, one of those kind of these low budget 80s horror films. And when you're watching, you're like, yeah, exactly. Like, was this movie made in the 80s? It's a great film. I love it. I have it here on Blu-ray. And like I said, if it's not very well known. Maybe it's more well known than I think. But if the viewer or the listener of the show hasn't heard it, by all means, check it out.
Yeah, especially if you like that satanic horror type of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you say Joker is the biggest aspect of, or takes up the most space in this book, right?
Well, it takes up a lot. I don't know if I don't. It's either that or probably Midsommar. You can maybe flip a coin. I'd have to go count the pages out. But Joker is Very deep movie. It works on many, many levels. I mean, it has a lot of Easter eggs in it, if you want to call it that. It has an alchemical storyline. If you are familiar with my other works and you understand how alchemical cinema works, you will understand that this has an alchemical theme to it, where it documents a transition, a transformation of this character, Arthur Fleck, from a lowly sort of down and out clown stand-up comedian to a criminal mastermind known as the Joker. I mean, we have a lot going on in this movie. I mean, I like one of the things that I talk about in my books is this idea, this notion, I call, and I still call it, occult casting. But my opinion of this, my theory on this has somewhat evolved more. I now view this as sort of one of these art of memory mnemonics almost, where the placement of an actor, a specific actor or actress, is intentionally designed by the filmmakers to evoke something else and transfer that something else into this new film. And clearly you have this going on with Joker, with the casting of Robert De Niro as the talk show host. That is obviously designed to resurrect in the mind, either consciously or subconsciously, two Martin Scorsese movies, both starring Robert De Niro, the first being The King of Comedy, where you have essentially the Rupert Pumpkin character being almost a complete parallel for the Arthur Fleck character. And the other one, of course, is Taxi Driver, where you have same sort of thing going on, where you have this, lowly, taxi driver descending into madness. Same thing with Arthur Fleck. So the casting, the placement of De Niro is obviously intentional and is designed to evoke those two films. Again, you have an alchemical storyline with it, with Joker, with him transforming into a super criminal. I mean, you'll see even, I guess one of the godfathers of the alchemical film is Black Swan by Darren Aronofsky, where you have the ballerina changing into a bird-like creature. You'll find a lot of parallels with Black Swan with Joker, where they're both kind of struggling, mentally ill people living in apartments with their sort of oppressive mothers. You find that theme going on. I like it. And of course you have the Easter eggs with, Batman. I mean, you have the, the one scene where he goes to Wayne Manor, and he meets young Bruce and he slides down the pole. I mean, that's obviously an homage to the old Adam West television show. When you're watching it and you pay attention to when you're in Joker, when you're in Arthur Fleck's apartment, he has behind his television set a print of Gainsborough's Blue Boy. Of course, this is one of the paintings that was defaced by Jack Nicholson in the Guggenheim Museum in Batman '89. So we have that little Easter egg in there as well. Great film, Joker. I just absolutely love that film. This was, again, a movie that when I was doing the Midsommar, I watched Joker in that same time frame, and I thought, well, since I've paused the book to do Midsommar, let me just add Joker to this as well, because it's just such a masterpiece. I love that film. I thought that Joaquin Phoenix was so deserving of the Oscar, and again, it's just a film that's overloaded with esoteric themes, imagery, Easter eggs. Great movie.
Okay. I actually have not watched it yet, and I keep meaning to, and I just haven't gotten around to it. But
do yourself a favor. Do yourself a favor and check it out.
Yeah.
It's a good movie. I don't think you'll be disappointed with it. I very much liked it. And if you like I'm a Batman fan. I'm much more into the DC universe than I am the Marvel verse. I guess it's just from growing up, I was just always interested in the DC characters much more than the Marvel people. I'm not putting it down. I'm just saying it's just me personally.
Yeah.
And I just thought Joker was tremendous. And if you're into Batman, you should love it.
I'm not into comic books. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But
sure.
I've also been told that you don't need to be to watch Joker because it doesn't come across like a comic book movie.
No, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. And certainly, of course, everybody has different interests and different likes. If you're not into comic books, of course, then you may not. You probably might not like it as much as someone else who does. Right. But no, it doesn't. It doesn't have a feel of a comic book. I mean, it feels more like it feels more like something like Black Swan than it does like a Batman movie. But you know, like I said, if you get time and you're stuck for something to watch and you need something, throw it on. I think you'll like it.
Oh, I plan on watching it. I just have failed to do so far.
Sure.
You talk about a cult casting with Donnie Darko. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well. This is another one. This is another one of those films that employs a cult casting, and this is Richard Kelly, and this is another one of those 9/11 movies. Donnie Darko. I'll get into the occult casting in a minute. Donnie Darko features a scene where it came out. It was filmed prior to 9/11. It came out, I believe, in October of 2001, right after 9/11, and the movie kind of had a very limited theatrical run, and there was a scene in it where Donnie is killed. The movie's 20 years old. If you haven't seen it, I'm spoiling it, but Donnie is killed from a jet engine falling into his bedroom to an American flag. And this again raised controversy with 9/11. The casting of Catherine Ross and Patrick Swayze in that movie is intentional and is designed to evoke a couple things. Catherine Ross, who plays a psychiatrist, is designed to invoke her performance in a movie called The Graduate, where the Dustin Hoffman character is questioning the mores of his society, of the milieu in which he lives. And this is, again, what Donnie is doing, the same thing. So the casting of Catherine Ross is designed to evoke The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman. The casting of Patrick Swayze, I mean, the whole movie is set in the 80s. And I mean, this is, again, is designed to evoke these cheesy 80 movies that he was in. But specifically, it's designed to evoke Dirty Dancing, which, again, deals with a theme of disenfranchised, sort of disillusioned youth in the 1960s, which, again, is a theme running rampant in Donnie Darko. The idea of disillusionment with adulthood, disillusionment with the society that they live in. So the casting of Swayze is designed to evoke and transfer his performance and the theme of Dirty Dancing into Donnie Darko, and the same thing with Catherine Ross, who plays the psychiatrist. Her casting is designed to evoke The Graduate and to kind of transfer the 60s angst into Donnie Darko. It's a tremendous film. I love Donnie Darko.
Oh, so do I.
What's so interesting when I watched that movie? It came out in 2001. I didn't see that movie till 2019. I don't think.
Oh,
it was just one of those films that had just fallen through the cracks. I just kind of like you with Joker. It was one of those films that just always had fallen through the cracks. I just never gotten around to watching it. And I sat down and watched it. And one of the things that I pointed out, and I'm not trying to sound egotistical, and I'm certainly not Charles Manson seeing things that aren't there, but what was funny with Donnie Darko was there was a lot of things that ran parallel with my life that appeared in that movie, which I just kind of really couldn't account for. I actually debated whether to put it in the book or not because I didn't want it to come off as egomaniacal or anything, or that I was an egomaniac. But there were a lot of parallels in that film that run parallel, that echoed my life.
And they wouldn't have... They wouldn't have if you watched it in 2001.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I may have picked up on it. I mean, maybe I would have if I watched it in 2001. I mean, the apocalypse is if you watch the movie, the number 8 permeates the movie, and the number 88 also. I mean, if you add up the countdown, comes to 88. And, of course, this is a reference to Back to the Future, the 88 miles. You take the number 8, turn it on its side. You have the lemniscate, the symbol for time travel. The end of the world is October 30th, 1988. October 30th is my birthday. On October 30th, 1988, I turned 17. Add 1 + 7 to get 8. I wrote a book about cinema symbolism, which I had the DeLorean on the cover. My name is Robert Sullivan. The author in the book, in the movie, who writes the book on time travel is Roberta Sparrow, R.S., same initials as mine. I just found a lot of interesting parallels with my life in that book that I couldn't quite account for. It was just weird, to say the least.
There have definitely been times where I was going to watch something and I felt like, no, I shouldn't watch this yet. And then when I do watch it, I'm like, okay, this wouldn't have had the same significance to me 3 months ago if I watched it. You know, it's like sometimes that symbolism is there for a reason. You're watching it at a certain time for a reason.
Yeah, and it seemed to me that the correct timeline for me to watch this one was 20 years or almost 20 years after it came out. I love the film. I think Donnie Darko is a tremendous film. I just absolutely think it's a great, cinematic masterpiece. But again, it's a movie that I took on. It's very Gnostic. I mean, you can view the illusions to me aside. You can, obviously, or maybe not obviously, you could see Donnie as a Gnostic Christ figure who is sacrificing himself to bring, to end the tangent universe and bring the primary universe back online to save his daughter, his sister and his mother. I just thought the film was tremendous, and that's a movie like Joker. If you haven't seen it yet, by all means, check out Donnie Darko. I'll end it on this. I'll say this with Donnie Darko: if you haven't seen it, by all means, check out the director's cut. The director's cut, I believe, is far superior than the original theatrical, and I think that the director's cut makes it much more easier to understand. If you see the theatrical version, you'll be sitting there watching and be like, "What the hell am I looking at?" The theatrical cut weaves into it the pages from the book, time travel, and you'll have a much better understanding as to what's going on in the film. So by all means, watch Donnie Darko, but watch the director's cut.
And so many people argue with me about that because they are, everyone, of course, originally saw the original version. The director's cut didn't come out for a few years. And when I saw the director's cut, I went, wow, I love the original cut, but makes it so much better because, you see the pages of the book and stuff like that. And it just, to me, it made an amazing movie even more amazing. But so many people are like, oh no, I like it the way it came out. And I'm like, why? This actually tied everything together better.
I like the original, but the director's cut makes it much more understandable. I mean, and you're not guessing as much. And I think the director's cut is better than the original. That's just my opinion. But I guess, everybody's different. If you like the original, you like the original. But I'm in the boat that you're in. I think the director's cut is far superior than the original. I think it makes it much more understandable and ties it together. And it's just a great film. But me personally, I'm a fan of the director's cut.
Did you have any opinion on S. Darko?
On what is this?
The sequel.
No, I didn't even know there was one.
Yeah, it's a few years later, and it revolves around his sister. It's called S. Darko.
Oh, I'll have to check it out. No, I didn't. I didn't even know there was one. Was it a movie or a book or a comic?
It's a movie.
Okay. I've never seen it.
It's not as good as Donnie Darko. I thought it was really interesting. It's very different from Donnie Darko.
Is it considered canon? I mean, does it have Richard Kelly's blessing, or was it just some people made it?
That I don't know.
Right.
I'm not. It came out. I watched it. I liked it. A lot of people didn't because it was very different from Donnie Darko. But you really can't make that movie twice.
No, you can't make that movie twice. I have not seen it, and I cannot obviously analyze or offer an opinion on something I haven't seen. But thanks for telling me about it. I'll definitely keep an eye out for it. It sounds like something I should check out.
Came out in 2009, and it was directed by Chris Fisher and written by Nate Atkins and Richard Kelly. Okay, well, Kelly was involved then, so. Yeah, the IMDb on it's a 3.6, if that tells you anything. Oh, geez. No, then it sounds like it didn't go over too well. No, it definitely didn't. I did like it, but I think everyone expected another Donnie Darko film, and that's not what it is. Sure. So, but like you said, I don't think you could remake Donnie Darko. No. And if you did, you just say, oh, it's just a ripoff of Donnie Darko. This is one of the knocks against Back to the Future 2, which I think is a great movie. Yeah. But people were expecting Back to the Future Part 1. I thought, what? Is he going to go to the future, go to a high school, do the same things they just did? I mean, if you did that, you just say it's a ripoff of Part 1. I mean, the reason I like Part 2 is it's completely different. I mean, it's completely original. And, I mean, you have the tangent universe with Biff and the casino and all that. I thought. I mean, people were like, oh, I didn't like it. I'm like, well, what did you want him to do? Just make a complete remake of the first one? Yeah. There's also the other movie that was made by the same guy who did Donnie Darko, which had some of the same imagery in it. I can't remember what it was based on the Twilight Zone episode. It's escaping me. I don't know. I can't remember the name of it because it was about the box. Oh, it's The Box. That's what it's called, The Box. Yeah, I don't know that one. I don't know that. I don't think I've seen that. All right, that's a really weird movie too. And it's I haven't seen that. Inevitably, I always get asked about movies that I haven't seen, but that's okay. Yeah. It's just that it has some, like I said, it's more in the vein of Donnie Darko. It's based on a Twilight Zone episode. It also came out in 2009, has Cameron Diaz in it. and James Marsden, Frank Langella.
Yeah, now that you say that, I remember that. I remember that movie. And
Yeah.
I didn't see it, but it had something like if you opened it, someone died or something like that.
Yeah, so the original Twilight Zone episode is very simple. They brought you a box. If you push the button, someone you don't know somewhere dies, and you get like $1 million. And then like the end thing is like the girl pushes the button and nothing happens, and because they examine the box and everything on the Twilight Zone episode, it's just a button. And as soon as she pushes it, this guy shows up, gives her $1 million, takes the box, and she goes, what are you doing with the box? And he says, well, I'm going to give it to someone you don't know.
Yeah, right.
And so they built the movie around that, and there's a lot of very weird stuff in it. I think you would definitely appreciate that one.
I'll check it out. I'll definitely check it out.
So let's see. You have let's talk about the whole Gnosticism with Archons, Aeons, Fallen Eternals, and stuff in Dark City, because I loved that movie.
Well, that's another one of these Gnostic films. I mean, that's really, right there with The Matrix and Truman Show and Fight Club. Well, you're doing again with the late 1980s. What's funny is that movie came out before The Matrix, and believe it or not, some of the sets from Dark City were used in The Matrix. It's the exact same set.
That makes sense.
The scene in the hotel where Neo goes up the steps and you see the black and white checkered floor. That's in Dark City, and the rooftop scene with Trinity. That's the same set that's being used in Dark City. And again, this is a movie that's very Gnostic. Again, you can clearly see, it has the Valentinian ring to it. Where the strangers are clearly the Archons. I mean, these would run in parallel with the agents in the Matrix who are trying to keep humankind in stasis, keep them asleep, prevent them from waking up, as it were. I mean, this is the same thing going on in the Matrix. The strangers also run parallel with this, and you have to be familiar with Gnosticism, with this, what are called the Aeons. And these are these emanations from the Supreme Being, which is called the monad. And if you're familiar with Valentinian philosophy, they kind of fall into degradation because one of the Aeons, named Sophia, tries to examine and tries to know the unknowable, tries to know the monad. Any Gnostic will tell you, you can't know it. It's unknowable. And because of this, she's punished and she's cast out of this place called the Pleroma. And as she's cast out, she gives birth to this false god known as the Demiurge, who fashions our reality on the Pleroma, but it's a false reality. So at any rate, the strangers of Dark City run parallel with two things. They clearly run parallel with the Archons. These are sort of the henchmen of the Demiurge who, keep the false reality going, keep everyone immured in matter, want to keep them asleep. But then they also run parallel with the Aeons. And of course, the Aeons, Sophia tries to know the unknowable, and that is to know the monad, this superior spiritual godhead who sits above the Demiurge. And of course, what are the strangers trying to do? Well, they're trying to turn the human soul into a commodity. They're trying to know the unknowable. So when you're dealing, I mean, this is a very Gnostic film. When you're looking at Dark City, you have the whole idea of Murdoch being the Neo character, and it's really the other way around. It's more Neo being the Murdoch character because the Matrix came out after Dark City, where he's the Valentinian illuminator, who brings light. Shell Beach brings the sun back to the world, and you have the strangers as the Archons or the Aeons trying to keep humankind asleep on the one hand, but then also trying to know the unknowable. I thought that was very interesting. The Sophia character in this is actually portrayed. It's not actually the Jennifer Connelly character. It's actually the Kiefer Sutherland character. What's his name? Joseph Paul Schreiber. He's interesting. That's an interesting name to give to him because he serves both humankind. He's trying to wake up humankind. He's trying to assist John Murdoch, but he's also aligned to the strangers. So he plays both roles. He plays both sort of the Sophia character who's who's married to the Aeons, but he's also the Illuminator trying to help humankind. And what's interesting about that is his name is whatever it is, Joseph Paul Schreber. That's actually named after a real life German psychiatrist who thought he was a woman. So it's so they give him that woman, they gave him the name of the psychiatrist who believed he was a woman. That makes him the Sophia character who plays this dual role, this dual allegiance, one to the Aeons, one to humankind. And of course, if you're familiar with Gnosticism proper, that's the same role that Sophia plays. So it's a very Gnostic film. It's very interesting. I love Dark City. I think it's a great film. Roger Ebert, it was his top film of 1998, I believe, or 1997. It was his favorite film of that year. And I just love it. I think Dark City is a great movie. And if you're interested in it, again, this is a movie that I analyzed fully in CS3.
All right. I love that movie. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, me too. I think it's a fantastic movie. And by all means, if you like The Matrix and you like things like Fight Club and you like Gnostic films, by all means, check out Dark City. I mean, you would. I have no problem if you asked me to list out the top 5 Gnostic films of all time. Dark City would be up there. Would be in the top 5. No, I don't know where I'd have it, but it would be in the top 5.
What would be the top 5?
Well, let's see. In no particular order. I mean, I think you would have to have. I mean, right off the bat, let's go with. I mean, we'd have to have The Matrix up there. We'd have to have Truman Show would have to go up there.
Yeah.
Dark City would have to go up there. I'd have to put Fight Club up there. Vying for the 5th place, take your pick. We could go with Mother with Jennifer Lawrence. We could go with Metropolis from the 1920s. We could go with Donnie Darko. We could go with Vanilla Sky. You could interchange any one of those out with in the 5th slot. I'd have no problem with that.
All right. So you mentioned Kabbalah and Hermetica, and particularly Christian saints Thomas Aquinas and Albert Magnus meddling with AI.
Yeah, well, this is something that a lot of people misdiagnose. Artificial intelligence in film is very popular. I mean, whether it be Roy Batty and the Nexus 6s, or artificial intelligence, or whether it be a robot or a Kabbalistic golem, such as Frankenstein's monster or Smurfette. And I'm not being facetious here, or Frosty the Snowman.
Right,
a creature that's human-like, that's inanimate, that's through some sort of magic or sorcery is brought to life. I mean, Frosty the Snowman has the magic hat put on his head.
Right.
Frankenstein's monster, Kabbalah, it's a golem, dead flesh, animated through lightning. Smurfette, lump of clay, made into a human-like form. Gargamel uses black magic from his great spell book to bring her to life. The robots of Blade Runner or Blade Runner 2049, again, artificial creatures that are human-like brought to life through some sort of Kabbalistic magic. Robots. The origins of all this lie in Christianity, of all things. It comes out of the Hermetica, which is this very Gnostic dialogues with this character called Hermes Trismegistus, where he talks about this praising for Egyptian statue making in the Hermetica, and he says this runs parallel with Jewish mythology with the golem, and in the Hermetica, Hermes says man is a creation of God. He's stuck here on Earth. He's immured in matter. So one of the ways he can escape the confines of matter is to become God-like himself. And in this dialogue, he says one of the things he can do is make a statue. And then he can do spells around this statue and bring it to life, and animate it. And he says the person at that point in time, once the statue is animated, they can do anything they want with it. And he said you can actually send this statue out to murder people.
Right.
And he says if the magician wants to do that, you're doing the will of God. You are number one. You have no problem with this. You can send it out to cure people, to heal the sick. If you want to send it out to do whatever you want, you're fine. You're doing the Creator's will. There were 2 Christian saints that were actually meddling around with this. Albertus Magnus and his most famous student, which is, of course, Thomas Aquinas. And Albertus Magnus apparently had created an Egyptian statue using straight out of the Hermetica of Hermes Trismegistus. He had created a talking head of brass. And this was so well known and so well documented that its lore lives on to this day, because it actually was so became so well known. The legend holds and the story holds that that it was actually destroyed by Thomas Aquinas because it kept bothering him. It kept waking him up at night. It kept interrupting his studies. So the whole idea of artificial intelligence comes out of this sort of world of occult Christianity, where these two saints were meddling around with artificial intelligence. And again, the origins of this predates Hollywood by a millennium. You're delving into Jewish magic and Christian magic coming out of the Hermetica. And again, this manifests in Hollywood. With some of these very popular creatures that you see, these popular manifestations, whether it be Roy Batty or Darth Vader, these sort of amalgamations of, the robot fused with human life. It's an interesting study, and I talk about it in the book. And again, this predates Hollywood by millennium, but its origins are Judeo-Christian in origin.
Okay. Huh. And that brass head thing is actually something I only heard about this week. I've never heard about it before, and now you're bringing it up.
Yeah, I mean, it was a talking head of brass made by animated somehow through magic by Albertus Magnus, who is a Christian saint, and it was ultimately destroyed by another Christian saint, his most famous student, Thomas Aquinas. Fascinating story, and again, it's like some of the stuff with John Dee. It belongs into the file cabinet of you can't make this stuff up. Yeah.
Okay, so you also talk about Bruno as Father Sebastian in Evil Speak.
The character of Giordano Bruno is critical. He's a Christian mystic. Well, I shouldn't say Christian. He was a mystic. He was sort of this wanderer, mastered the art of memory. The Hermetica was his religion. He was trying to speak with these things called the Egyptian demon deacons. He believed that meditation on the archetypes brought you closer to the Godhead. Believed that Christianity and Judaism were ripoffs of the Egyptian religion, which he considered to be the purest form of religion. He was eventually burned at the stake in 1600 by the Jesuits. If you want to see a really hardcore rendition of him in film, by all means, check out Evil Speak. The Father Sebastian character is clearly based on Giordano Bruno. Obviously, Bruno was not a Satanist, but he did meddle with demonism and demons. He was trying to summon them. So he's an ex-Dominican friar, I should point out. He's critical because his art of memory techniques are being used by Hollywood to this day. I mean, and this is, he got into this whole notion of using these mnemonic techniques to conjure something. Archetypes from the heavens above. And Hollywood does the same thing. I mean, Hollywood is doing this today. They're using this archetypal imagery, whether it be, an imagery, whether it be an actor or a headless mannequin, to evoke something else in you. So Bruno is a very interesting study. And like I said, if you want to see more of a hardcore rendition of this guy in film, check out the movie Evil Speak with Clint Howard. The character of Father Sebastian is a Bruno analog. Maybe a little hardcore, maybe a little of a hardcore rendition, but a Bruno analog nevertheless.
And that came out in the early 80s?
Yeah, I believe that's 81, 82, I want to say.
Yeah.
Bruno lived in the 16th century. I mean, he was burned at the stake in 1600. I mean, but, he's still with us. And Hollywood is using his magic in films. Make no mistake.
So the last thing for the show here, let briefly get into fairy tales as solar allegories.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you're dealing with religion or the archetypes or the monomyth, I mean, you're dealing with the astrological, astronomical allegories. I mean, you have it in religion. Jesus is the sun. The 12 apostles are the zodiac. Moses is the sun with lunar attributes. The 12 tribes of Israel are the 12 houses of the zodiac. Neo Anderson is the sun. Luke Skywalker is the sun, doing battle with works of darkness, the Sith. Harry Potter represents the sun. These are all solar personifications. Same thing in the fairy tales. Little Red Riding Hood is the sun. She wears the cloak of autumn, the red leaves, the orange leaves, only to be swallowed up by the wolf of winter. to be liberated at the vernal equinox by the youthful, Prince Charming character, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Prince Charming, who is the sun at the vernal equinox, dispelling winter. This is the same thing going on over and over in the fairy tales. There are all these solar astrological allegories. Beauty and the Beast, the young woman is held hostage in the winter months in the Beast castle. The Beast is the winter. He's eventually turns back into the youthful prince, the sun at the vernal equinox, liberating the sun from the throes of winter. You will find this in Cinderella, Snow White. These are all. So I get much more in depth with it in the book, but these are all solar astrological allegories, that just, permeate all legends, all mythology. Only the meaning has been lost. And again, you'll find this in some of our favorite movies. Luke Skywalker is the sun, the Christ figure doing battle with the works of darkness, the Sith. Harry Potter does battle with the Death Eaters. Neil Anderson, the agents. It's all, Frodo Baggins, Jesus Christ, who dispels Sauron, the Lord of Darkness. It's all the exact same thing, just retold, rebranded over and over again. You'll find it in religion. I get into that probably more in the Royal Arch of Enoch book, but you'll find it in fairy tales as well. Interesting study. And again, this is something I took on in both Cinema Symbolism 2 and CS3.
Okay, and it's sort of like just the mythological archetypes there that just keep getting retold over and over again.
Well, right. If you read the works of the Renaissance masters like Pico della Mandarola and Gino d'Annunzio and Marcello Ficino, they'll tell you all the archetypes come from the heavens. They say that's where all the archetypes come from. What do they mean? It's the stars, it's the moon, it's the planets, it's their interaction with one another. This is where these stories are coming from. The sun enters the house of Cancer. When does that occur? Well, that's the summer equinox, the summer solstice, when the sun's at its strongest. What happens in Christianity? Well, what are the stars in Cancer? The little ass, the donkey, the little ass and the greater ass, the large donkey and the smaller donkey. What happened? This is Jesus riding the two donkeys into Jerusalem, triumphant. It's all. This mythology is coming from the interaction of the sun, the stars, and the planets interacting with each other. Perseus is the sun, slaying the dragon. He's a better one. St. George slays the dragon. St. George is the sun. The dragon is the constellation Draco. What happens to the stars when the sun rises, right? You can't see them anymore. They flee. Right, this is why St. George slays the dragon. It's the same thing over and over again, just rebranded and retold with the archetypes.
All right. So the new book is Cinema Symbolism 3.
Correct.
We're going to continue talking about this in the Patreon segment, but where can people pick up your stuff?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on. Where Does the Road Go? It was my pleasure to be here. You're a tremendous host, and I really much enjoyed being here tonight. If you're interested in me and my books, the easiest place to buy the books is just on all the online vendors, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. They're on, the print edition you can get the Kindle version or the ebook. Just simply going to Amazon, typing the book's title, Cinema Symbolism 3, or my name, Robert W. Sullivan IV, will bring them up. If you're interested in me and or links to buy the books, you just go to my website. My website is my name. My name is Robert W. Sullivan IV. So my website is Robert W. Sullivan, and then for the fourth, it's the letter I, the letter V, Roman numerals for the fourth, robertwsullivan.iv.com. There's links there's links to buy the books, information about me, information about my upcoming podcast projects I'm working on, any latest show that I've been on, that gets posted there. So, and again, links to buy the books, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You can go there, find it. It's a very easy page to navigate, www.robertwsullivan.iv.com.
You said you have a podcast project?
Oh, no. I post podcasts
that you're on,
and that I've been on, and radio shows, and upcoming podcasts and things like that. I don't actually have a podcast, but I put up shows and things like that I'm going to be on.
Gotcha. Okay, and you have 5 books total.
5 books: Royal Arch of Enoch, the 3 movie books, Cinema Symbolism 1, 2, and 3, and A Pact with the Devil, which is a work of fiction.
And what's the fiction book about?
It's about it's a murder mystery. It's a Sherlock Holmes style murder mystery that involves a witch's coven and an investigation. It was something that I dreamt, and I liked the dream, so I put it in a book. And I like the way it came out. I'm actually in the process right now. I'm making some edits to it and some of my other books. Those new editions will not be new editions. They will just replace the ones out there. But it's essentially the same story, but kind of like a murder mystery is the way I would describe it.
Nice. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining me, and patrons will get a little bit more of this conversation. Thank you, Robert. I want to take a moment here to give a special shout out to those patrons pledging $10 or more. Allison Cook, Super Inframan, Eric Hervin, Tim, Andrew Nichols, The 100th Monkey Project, a blue 2nd Gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Giaquinta, Alex Whitcomb, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Big Boy Limina, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, Land of the Crazy Incommunicable, Christopher Ernst, Craig Cisternos, Craig Parmenter, Crystal Ann Compton, David Moore, Denise Sarek, Diane B., Diona Bidwell, Dominic O'Malley, Duffy Dowder, Edu Camahort, MTK, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, J. Otto Bullitt, James Lattimore, Johanna Rojas, John W. Bracken, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Kristen L., Linz Jackson K., Luke Osborne, Mark Bowley, Mark Brady, Matt in Delaware, Matthew Sproul, Patricia W., Paul Jeffries, Ray Benedetto, Riker and Stark, Roger Gonzalez, Sam Sharon, Sedgder, Martinez Saint, Stone Wilderness, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, 36 Dingo, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead, Vincent Trewell, Walker, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, William Lovelace, Ren Collier, and Stephen D. Thank you all so very much for your awesome support, and thank you to all of my patrons, because without you, this show would not be possible. All right, if you enjoyed that conversation, there's a considerable extra in our Patreon for this week. You can become a Patreon at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Just click on the Patreon link. It's only $3 a month. You get extra content all month long. And it's not just little tidbits. Usually it's fairly lengthy extras where I just continue talking to most guests. Not all the guests, but most of the guests. Plus some little extras here and there. You can also get Where'd the Road Go merch on the website. There's a shop link there that you can go get T-shirts. Well, anything. I mean, it goes through TeePublic, and you can get anything from pillows to wall hangings to mugs to all kinds of clothing with various different images on it from Where Did the Road Go? 2 designed by Timothy Renner and 2 designed by the late Jeff Ritzman. So yeah, that stuff is out there if you want to help support the show. Also, giving us good ratings in whatever podcatcher you're listening to, reviews, spread the word. Everything counts, and thank you to everyone who helps out in doing all of that, and to everyone who is listening to this show. All right, and I will see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.